Welcome everybody to today's Property Women Member Spotlight. And today I have an awesome guest. Let me just tell you a little bit about her before I introduce her. But the reason we've picked this lady is because a lot of women go through relationship breakdown, or they have lots of other challenges that might happen, and they think because of that, or because they're on their own, they can't invest or they can't take it anywhere to the next step. And this lady is living proof that that doesn't have to be the case. So she's such an inspiration, and the time that I've known her, which is, a number of years now, but we don't age, so that's irrelevant. But her name and who she is what we're going to go through today. But her name is Judith Taylor. Welcome, Judith.
Oh, hi, Rachel. It's so great to be joining you today. And I'm really hoping to be a bit of inspiration to the ladies because, as we were discussing, time does go by and sometimes we forget actually what space we may have been in within our lives and how much that can change us. And then when you move on, you forget just how amazing that was.
Exactly. It's one step at a time, isn't it? But you don't realise how far you've come until you look back down those stairs and see the distance between where you were then and where you are now.
That's exactly right. And I know that there's a lot of women who go through a bit of adversity in their life. It might be they lose money over something, or a relationship breakdown, or whatever. There's all sorts of things that we can go through. And I think at that point in your life, you can go one way or the other. You can either roll into the fetal position and become a victim. Oh, poor me, look at what the world did to me. Or you can go, well, hang on a minute, how can I dust off, start again, and create something that was so much better than what we already had? And sometimes that can be a realization, or for me it was a realization that a man is no financial plan. That if you want to, and I'm not having a go at anyone regarding their status. I don't mean that. We're all different. We're married or single or de facto or in a relationship or not in a relationship. I'm not even referring to that. What I'm meaning is that it's a realization that as women, we do need to think about ourselves and our future, because we don't know whether we're going to have someone else to rely on or not. Great if you do, but if you don't, you also need to be able to manage that situation yourself and create your own future.
Absolutely. And I think I heard something the other day from Seth Godin, actually. It was on one of the YouTube things I was watching, and he said, there is no Prince Charming. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are. The bottom line is that you are responsible for your life, and you're the only person really that you can rely on. So, anyway, let's get on and talk about what you've achieved, because you have done some amazing things and it's been fun, hasn't it? So let's get on to the first thing. So we're going to be talking today, Judith, about who you were, what you've done, and who you are now. So that's really where we're going. So a little bit of a trip down memory lane for you, I'm sure. I managed to compile some pictures from the old days, not too far back, just so that we could have a bit of a laugh at your expense.
Oh, that's so good, Rachel, so good.
Anyway, tell us about when I first met you. I can remember you talking about the having no husband, no job, and the derelict house. So give us a bit of insight into where you were then.
Yeah, well, my background on that was that I'd been through a rather unusual, not a particularly unusual relationship, but one where I basically ended up, well, that's all I ended up with, is that house that you can see in the picture. And I began renovating that house under very dire circumstances. Funds had been frozen, etc. And so I was actually renovating on a credit card. And for 6 months, my son and I had no kitchen, no laundry, and half a bathroom. And at the time, it certainly wasn't easy trying to feed this kid, this growing boy, and not having a kitchen and not really having money to be able to afford to eat out. But we had to eat out because it was so filthy that you couldn't even, for 6 months, I couldn't take my shoes off inside that house. It was an absolute disaster. And so when I finally finished renovating it, I thought, wow, if I could live through this, which wasn't easy, trying to live through it and renovate it all at the same time with no money, I wonder how easy it would be to actually renovate houses where you didn't actually have to live in there, where you could just get in and actually do it. And that's when the opportunity came to me to go and attend a Reno King's workshop. And interestingly enough, I'd spent years prior to that at uni gaining a uni education, but I learnt more in one weekend from the boys than I'd done in years and years and years of uni, because I just knew that no matter what my education was, that it was property that I wanted to do. And so with the help of the boys, who became my mentors and my favourite men in the world, I ended up working with the boys. And so I travelled all over Australia with them, went to every workshop that they did, and learnt their principles, which no matter what, there's not a day goes by where I don't apply one of the Reno King rules, because those rules are sound, and those boys had integrity and ethics beyond anything I've ever seen. And they walk the talk as well. You hear a lot of people talk about property, but these boys get in and physically do it, and that's where I learnt from them. And it was just that decision to move forward. And I think one of the things for women moving forward is to, first of all, it's got to be something that you want to do. And secondly, you have to surround yourself with other people who are going to support you, because one of the things for me, my support people were my mum and my sister, and they really didn't get it. They didn't get what I wanted to do. And every time I'd look at houses, they would come up with negatives. And it became very frustrating, because I get excited and want to share my ideas. And I found out from them that the reason that they weren't supporting my ideas was that they saw me as a failure, because I had had this relationship breakup, and they assumed that I would make a disaster of property as well. So I needed to turn that around and get their support, which they did. That previous photo actually was my son at the time, who used to sort of come out and help me measure fences, and I used to make him go into houses and suss out the opposition. I used to get him to hide in rooms and check out what the other people were saying about the houses. But since then, he did actually grow a bit. And so along the way, I did manage to feed him, even though we started with no kitchen. So that was all right. And so things went on, and I took the plunge. And of course, working with Reno Kings, for me, one of the great ways to add value was to do renovations or cosmetic renovations. So then you have to work out what suits you. So I tried this idea of climbing ladders and painting and carrying on, and I did a really good job, but I was way too slow. I couldn't actually afford to pay myself, because you've got to balance it out. You have to work out how much time it's taking compared to how much rent you're losing by not getting a professional to do the job. So really, I don't touch much at all anymore, but again, that varies with the individual person. Some women love to get in and do the physical work. So I would recommend adjusting it to suit yourself. And then something amazing happens along the way, and that is that if you're patient, because it is a get-rich-slow scheme, and if you're patient and maybe you start with just one little property and you do something to add some value to it, and then you wait a little bit longer, then that property's gone up in value, and then automatically the bank comes and values it, says it's worth more, and then you can borrow against that house to buy another one. And that's so exciting when that happens. It's just amazing. It's money that comes from nowhere.
And it's like you said, you started off basically using a credit card to do your own house, to get that going. And I'm presuming that's where you got a bit of equity to start to get your first property. And then you start to do your renovations. And it's just, as you say, just having that bit of patience, but also the persistence that you've had and that positive attitude. Because I think a lot of times I say to clients, it's not what happens to you. It's sometimes what happens for you to bring you to the next stage. And this is obviously, you know, where Judith Taylor blossoms. And this is really where I met you. So it was through Reno Kings, you know, we got connected together. So just tell us a little bit about the beginning of Property Women.
Yes, well, what happened, we're spending so much time working with the boys, we were doing some extra research, and we found out by doing this research is that women learn differently to men, and women have different needs to men. And if you can get women into a different environment by themselves, they are much freer, and then they don't have a fear of asking silly questions or asking for help or saying, give me a recipe. If you give a woman a recipe of how to do something, she can go and do it. And then plus the support around that of like-minded people, so that it's not the taxi driver who's telling you that it's a bad time to buy. It's interesting. Every taxi driver's been saying that it's a bad time to buy ever since I've been catching taxis. Not that
which is why they're still
so it's interesting. Every year is a bad year according to them. It's quite amazing. And anyway, and it's also, I think, finding something that you love to do. I don't know anyone who does property just for making the money. It's a thing where you love the properties and you have fun doing what you're doing. And so when we discovered the idea of women, that's when Property Women was born, and it was going to be under the umbrella of the Reno Kings. But it became so popular that instead of being under Reno Kings, it was actually side by side with Reno Kings, but still using those sound principles and sound teaching methods that, if you stick to them, they absolutely work.
And what interests me is thinking back to, you know, when you were a single mum and you had the 2 kids and you've got a growing boy, very growing boy, which we'll look at later. It's interesting that you would never, I'm sure, have expected that in a few years down the track, you would have had property, you would have had your own business basically with Property Women, and be so connected with, you know, other people that were already successful and doing lots of property themselves.
I've spent years pinching myself because there's hardly a time goes by over that duration where it's that thought pattern of, how could this happen? How could this happen to somebody as ordinary as me? But then it's the realization that if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think that's the really important factor there, because it starts with things like renovations and it ends up with development sites, and which I have a number of development sites, and then I've managed to get my dream home. I'm at Newcastle East now in a very impressive historic property, which is just absolutely fantastic. I'm right on the harbour foreshore, and I'm 200 metres from the beach. It's just incredible. Oh, and you'd love this, Rachel.
What are you driving?
Walk to the cafe. Oh, I'm driving a Mercedes C250 AMG Sports, you name it, all that sort of thing. But one of the really important things here that I have been able to do for my daughter is that I have been able to support her while she's a single mum. I've been able to support her financially while she's doing a law degree, which is just absolutely astounding to be able to think that I've been able to do that through property. So it reflects onto your children. It reflects onto everything that you do. This picture is Bald and Beautiful Day that I've been involved in for 14 years, would you believe. I'm the founder of that. We have an amazing committee, and it's a day of fun, pampering and well-being for adults with cancer, and it makes an extraordinary difference in people's lives.
And that's another thing. I think one of the other things that I advocate or advocate. I say advocate because of Joe at Advocate Services. One of the things I advocate is that you often do more for other people than you do for yourself. And that often helps you, actually, because the feeling of doing for other people is really good, isn't it? I mean, I see the joy on your face when you're bringing, you're pampering or helping to get organised a whole event that pampers people who are caring for or in that situation. And it's just amazing the feeling that you get also being able to help them. But that's a big thing, I think. And even with your property investing now, you've gone sort of not just to doing your own property deals, but to helping others. But I should just go back a little bit. So just some of these pictures, just to give you a bit of an idea, but also just to explain that both Jude and I love property women, and we're still involved as much as we can be. We're so fortunate that Joe wanted to take over and look after Property Women as a business, which is doing an amazing job. So it's really good because we can just sort of swan in and swan out and do stuff. And Joe has all the stuff to organise with any business. So thanks, Joe.
Awesome job, we get to have the fun.
But it really is good catching up with all property women. That's one of the things, isn't it? You just see the smiling faces and helping people to learn and earn. It's just awesome. So you're helping other people in relation to charities, and just so that people can see the difference between your son. Look at the size of him now.
We need the next photo.
That one?
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. That's my daughter's graduation, and as you can see, I'm the short one in my family. My grandson is very tall for his age as well. At the rate he's going, he'll be as tall or taller than Uncle Chris, and Uncle Chris is 6'8.5".
I think you fed him too well, Jude.
Just as well I didn't ever have a kitchen.
Like you say, your daughter wouldn't have been able to go through uni because she had some issues as well, didn't she, in relationships, but she wouldn't have been able to go to uni without you helping her out as well. So that's one of the great things, the property is not just growing yourself and growing your property portfolio, but helping other people to grow.
That's exactly right. And that was when I found another slight, it's all in the same path, but a slight turn that I made is that all of my properties are in the Newcastle area, and I've done amazingly well with my properties in my portfolio, and that's when I decided to help other people to find property in the Newcastle area. That's a bus trip that I did in the area, which is a lot of fun actually, to take people around and show them just all the different strategies of what's available. It can be renos, or it can be developments, or granny flats, or whatever. And for me, there's no line of distinction between whether something is my project or a project that belongs to a client, and it's all the same to me. It's that thing of moving forward together and seeing the growth and seeing the results that come along from applying the principles to what we're doing. And I think the other thing of, again, remembering that everybody's strategy is different. So it's finding the right property that works within the right budget as well.
You're right, but I've found the same when you're, sort of helping people to understand property investing and choosing their strategy, and then sort of moving forward and doing all their analysis, etc. Once they start getting the properties, I get really excited. It's like getting my own property, but it's like being a grandmother. You don't have all the pain, but you get all the gain. So you get all the excitement and all the, all that sort of adrenaline pump that you would, but through somebody else's experience, which is awesome. So helping other people.
It is awesome. It's just amazing driving around and looking at these properties and just knowing the background behind all of them and what the results are and all of that sort of thing. It is. It's like they're your own babies.
And so this is a really good picture, but I think I chose this picture, if you can see that now, because this shows to me that you really have fun doing what you're doing. And I know one of your mantras is that you have fun every day of your life. But just give us a bit of an idea about just an average day for you.
Well, an average day for me might be something like, I spend a lot of time doing research. So I'm researching a property all the time. So I'll spend perhaps several hours doing that. And it's a little bit like getting on Facebook or something. You don't even realise how the time is going by because it's something that you enjoy doing. And then I might be out actually physically looking at properties. And then, going to an auction. There's one where I went to an auction and bought a property. I love auctions. And then the rest of the time is helping people, or it might be my own projects, but helping people to, what do they need to put into their house to improve it, or what do we have to do to get a DA process happening, and what are all the steps that we need to take? Do we need to get a tree removed? Do we need to have a survey? Do we need a bushfire report? What is it that we need to make this project happen? And I'm a little, I can wave a bit of a stick here and there, actually. I have a couple of clients that I have to nag them and swing the whip at them and say, come on, you've got to give me a decision about this bathroom. You're losing rent, you have to get on with things. So I'm very good at nagging, which is rather good. And so I do all of that. That can be good. I don't know. I have to apologise sometimes for the nagging. And then in between all of that, I go ballroom dancing. I do at least three nights a week of doing lessons, and then I do social dancing as well, because what's the point of doing all of that for our kids years ago if you can't have that for yourself? So that's my version. So I don't play golf or go to gyms, but I love dancing, so that's all good as well. And then I might come home from dancing and think, I'll do a little bit more research, or I'll send somebody an email about something, or whatever it might be. And when I hear people talking about the word retiring, and this is just me, everybody has to do what suits them, but when I hear that word, it freaks me out, and I nearly go into a stress attack because I find that really hard to handle. Because I couldn't ever imagine not doing what I'm doing. I don't get that. Because when you love what you do and you have fun every day, why would you want to change that and just sit around doing nothing?
Exactly. So you are such an inspiration. If I said to anybody now, this is Judith Taylor, this is what you'll find on her website, 2 master's degrees, justice of the peace, licensed buyer's agent, it doesn't give you the feedback and the information that you've just shared with us, Jude, because that's gold. Having people understand where you were to where you are now, it's not just about where you were, but it's who you've become. And that's one of the key things that I'm so glad that you've imparted, because every step is a growth, isn't it? Every time that you've had to go out of your comfort zone to do something, to renovate the house on a credit card, try and feed your kids, from that sort of beginning to where you are now is a huge step. I mean, how many years are we talking between then and now?
About 14, I think.
But it didn't take long.
In the scheme of things, that's actually not that long. It sounds like a long time, but it actually isn't that long. And I came across something the other day that I was reading about someone talking about their portfolio and how many properties they had, and they had, I don't know, I think it was $1 million worth of property. Well, back then that sounded like a lot, but by today, you only have to put something together, and you just keep growing it and growing it, and there's several millions worth of property. Even just recently, I've actually helped my nephew to actually get his second property. I mean, that's just amazing. A young boy, he's the only one in the family, but who's taken on what I say. And so I'm quite excited that that was about a week ago that he has actually settled on his second one, and both of them are development sites. So that's just astounding that he's been able to do that. He works hard, and he knows that he can't have 50 cappuccinos a week, but that's all right. He doesn't have time. We're still allowed to have ours, though.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm very careful about my cappuccinos. But it hasn't, although it's taken 14 years to get where from there to now, you've been doing this for some time now. So how long have you been a property buyer? Because, you know, we sort of sold out at Property Women a number of years ago. So how long have you been doing the property buyers?
It's years, and it's amazing within the period of time. What actually also happens is that you begin to build an amazing team around you, or that's what I've found. And so anything that I want, if I'm researching a property, any piece of information that I want, I can get people who I'm so appreciative of that will help me and give me the guidance on things that I can't know the answer to everything. I mean, I can know something like I have to do with fire ratings on something, a building that needs some fire control on it, and I know that that's what I need, but I don't know, I'm not an engineer to know what that is. And so just using that as an example, or in with a really town planner who knows the exact requirements for the council, so that you know what can you fit on this block and if it's on with all of that. So one of a few weeks ago that on the Friday night I aborted something bid at an auction, because when I did my final bid, there was something in.
I'm not sure if I'm losing you a little bit. I'm just there. I've lost the internet connection a little bit. I'm not sure if it's me or you. Anyway, so perhaps I better wrap up now. So Jude, you were just talking about how important it is to build your team.
Well, it is important, and it's amazing to me how over the period of time I've accumulated a team of the most amazing and fantastic people who, no matter what I want, they're there to give me guidance, because that's the important thing. As a property investor, you can't know everything. You know enough to know the right questions to ask, but that doesn't mean you're not a solicitor, and you're not an accountant, and you're not a town planner, but you know enough to be able to know if they're telling you the right answers, because this is actually critical when you're purchasing a property. It can go either way. One is that you're wanting to determine that everything is ticked in all of your boxes to make sure that you're making the right purchase, particularly if it's an auction, you don't get any cooling off period. But it also goes the other way. If something's a dud, you need to get rid of it straight away and move on to something else. You just don't want to get caught up with that. And even an example of that, I pulled out of one on a Friday evening. I was going to bid at the auction on the Saturday, and there was something came up that was a deal breaker for us, but I went to the auction anyway to watch, and a guy enthusiastically bid. One part of it, he even bid against himself, which was interesting, and he bought the property without doing his due diligence. And this was a pretty serious issue with this property, and I heard about a week later he was trying to on-sell it. So it's really important that you know what you're doing, and that's why I'm so grateful to have such a great team of anybody that I need to answer any questions when we're looking at a deal. So interestingly, of all of my clients who've put anything through the council, we've never had anything rejected, and that's from doing some good preparation up front, and perhaps also a bit of luck on our side. I have had a couple of difficult ones that have taken time to get through, but they've still gone through nonetheless. So that's pretty good, and that's thanks to great people.
And I think there's two things there that I would pick up on. One is that you're helping other people in their business as well, which is great. Like the more you do and the more other people invest, the more it helps everybody that's associated with investing and renting, etc. So it basically helps the whole stimulus of the economy. But the other thing is just being careful that they have to be people that you can trust, and also understanding that, I mean, it's great to use you as a buyer's agent, Joe as a buyer's agent, or yours more selecting, but from Joe's perspective, buying a property, if people don't do that research, and I see so many, I've had clients that have come to me after they bought a property, and I don't do buyer's agency, but they come to me for coaching. They've already bought a property and they've been stitched up, and that's what's holding them back. So then we've got to do a lot of creative stuff to get around it. So finding the people you can trust and not just buying off anybody, I think is a key thing. And that's when getting yourself educated, which you've done, gives you that background, doesn't it? Or knowing what to expect, as you said, knowing the questions to ask. And even if you don't do it yourself, then you're in a better position to know who you can trust, because you know the types of things that you need to know. And if they don't ask you the right questions, you know they're either not worried or they're not proficient enough. So having your team, I think, is great because it helps the economy, but it also means that people then get access to people that you trust because they trust you. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Rachel, because I do see people the same as what you're describing that have, I like your terminology of being stitched up, because there's no other way of describing it.
It's sad, but you know, that's what happens. People are sort of enthusiastic about investing, but you just got to still do it right. And it doesn't mean you can't get anywhere from, you know, getting off to a bad start. A bit like relationships, you know, sometimes you've got to go there, get past it and move on. But that's the whole idea. And I'd like to think that everybody's taken from this, no matter where your stage or age or everything is in relation to your life, that there's always a way forward. And looking in the past, the only reason we're looking in the past is just to prove to people how amazing things can turn out for you. But having that faith that they can, and just being persistent, persevere, make sure you're helping others as well as yourself, because all of that counts and makes you feel better as well as a person. And then you grow to becoming such an amazing person like Judith Taylor. Thank you so much, Judith. You've been amazing as always. Any last words that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Well, it's just been a pleasure speaking with you, Rachel, and my view has always been that if you can inspire one person to take action and to make some improvements in their life, then it's worth it.
It absolutely is, and it's fun. And as you say, I know you have fun every day of your life.